I won't live until I die. And I work hard for my whole life.
Today we are talking about the history of Parkdale.
Parkdale, an eclectic and diverse neighborhood in Toronto's West End. The area we now refer to as Parkdale originated as a 240-acre gift to James Brock in 1812. The land from Queen to the water, from Jameson to Dufferin, was underutilized by Brock, and by the mid-1800s the area was being developed with grandiose Victorian houses, cottages, and the Parkdale railway station at Queen and Dufferin. The village of Parkdale was incorporated in 1879, with the City of Toronto annexing it in a somewhat controversial move in 1889. The Parkdale of today was a very different place than back then. The neighborhood was viewed as distant from Toronto. High Park and Parkdale were viewed as day trips and brief holidays, rather than quick streetcar or Uber rides. Hundreds of Victorian homes were built to accommodate the affluent new residents. But things in Parkdale were not always as they seemed. In October of 1894, one of Toronto's most notorious murders happened there.
So I am at Lakeshore and Jameson right now, in a very scary spot. But right here, just south of the train tracks, is where Frank Westwood was murdered in 1894. It's known as one of the greatest Toronto mysteries. He was an 18-year-old man living in a mansion right here with his family. A man late at night on a Saturday came, knocked on the door. Frank opened the door, and he was shot dead with a pistol. So this was a huge, salacious murder in Toronto's history.
The early part of the 20th century brought one of the largest stretches of prosperity to the neighborhood. What has to be understood is the geography of Parkdale in the early 20th century. Parkdale stretched south from Queen all the way to the water. There was no Gardiner at the time. From 1911 to 1922, the Toronto Harbour Commission improved the lakefront area in the Parkdale region. They added a beautiful boardwalk, sports fields, the Sunnyside Bathing Pavilion, Sunnyside Amusement Park, and Palais Royal, which was a canoe factory and dance hall. Southern Parkdale was not only a destination for Torontonians, but for tourists from all over.
So from the beginning of the 20th century till about the 1950s, this area right back here was actually the most affluent and fanciest part of Parkdale. This is where tons of the mansions were. In the 1950s, when the construction of the Gardiner happened, this happened. So what they did was they tore down well over 150 houses, these beautiful Victorian houses. They also deconstructed the Sunnyside Amusement Park, a lot of the boardwalk. So this area that was super beautiful and super affluent, it was this great tourist destination, is now this. So with the construction of the Gardiner in the 1950s, Jameson became very different. As you can see, a lot of low-rise apartment buildings. They were built quickly and still to this day have a lot of problems. They were built here because of its proximity to the highway. And this really marked a change in the demographics of Parkdale.
The addition of the Gardiner and the construction of dozens of low-rise apartment buildings greatly affected the transformation of Parkdale, marking largely its departure from affluence towards more of a working-class community. What was to happen to Parkdale next can be argued to have been one of the largest effects on the neighborhood ever. The Ontario provincial government of the mid-1970s released thousands of long-term care mental illness patients from both the Queen Street West and Lakeshore psychiatric institutions. Parkdale, with its newly constructed and affordable low-rise towers, was smack dab between the hospitals and an obvious destination for the newly released patients. With plummeting housing prices, Parkdale also became a destination for the newly arrived immigrant and refugee populations. In recent years, as is the case in many Toronto neighborhoods, gentrification has engulfed the area, but Parkdale, greatly to its credit, has seemingly held on to its authentic and real nature throughout the process.
I won't live until I die. And I work hard for my whole life. Lord, I know how hard I try. till I die.